Hello, friends, and welcome to Pour and Explore wine, food, and travel stories from around the world. I'm Nick Elliott, the Wine Guy. This is where we sip, savor, and wander through the world of wine, explore incredible food, and uncover the stories behind unforgettable destinations. Each week, you'll hear engaging conversations with wine pros, chefs, travelers, and fellow enthusiasts, plus educational episodes to help you sip smarter and explore deeper. So, grab a glass, pull up a chair, and let's pour, explore, and celebrate the good life. Let's dive in. So, you're standing in front of a wall of drinks, refrigerators stacked to the floor, to the ceiling, hundreds of bottles, cans, cartons, labels screaming at you from every direction. You've got maybe 30 seconds before whoever you came with starts to lose their patience. You grab something, and you're not even sure why. Here's the thing, that moment was engineered. Every inch of that shelf was planned, mapped, argued over, and decided long before you walked through the door. And today's guest has been on both sides of that decision. Welcome to Pour and Explore, everyone. I'm Nick Elliott, the Wine Guy, and today I'm sitting down with Debbie Wildrick, 30 years in the beverage industry, former category buyer for 7-Eleven and brand builder for some of the biggest names in the business, and the person that product founders call when they need someone to tell them the truth before they spend everything they have trying to get a product onto the shelf. We talk about why eye level is basically impossible for a new brand, what the word schematics means, and why it controls every product in the store you've ever walked into, and why the consumer makes a purchase decision in 5 to 7 seconds, which means your label is doing a lot more work than you think. We also get into private label wines. Yes, we're talking about brands like Kirkland, brand loyalty, non-alcoholic boom, and what Debbie says is the single most important thing a small brand must walk into a buyer meeting with. It's not the product and it's not the pitch deck. It's data, and most people don't even know they need it. If you've ever wondered why your favorite drink disappeared off the shelf, or you've got a product idea that you're trying to get to the market, this one's going to change how you walk through a store. Let's rock and roll. All right, Debbie, thank you so very much for being on the show. Welcome to Pour and Explore.
Great. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show with me. So we talked a little bit about who you are and what you do at the top of the show. So we're just going to dive right in, and I've got some questions about all of the cool things that you used to do, and we're going to do a little bit of the deep dive to get started here. So you've managed a bunch of beverage portfolios worth billions and billions of dollars over the years. When a consumer walks into a store and sees a wall of drinks, a wall of refrigerators, a wall of drinks, they see tons of choices. What do you see?
It depends on the store and the shelf. It can either be a great product selection geared to consumer needs, or it can also be on the other side, which is mass confusion and chaos. Depending on retailer strategies and the amount of products on the shelf, the consumer, many times, if given too much information, if they see too much information, they just block it all out. That's just a consumer's mindset. So it's real important to come together in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm not going to ask you the negative side of this question, but on the positive side of this question, is there a big box retailer? Let's just keep it at the high level. Is there a big box retailer that's doing it right, in your opinion?
To some degree. Now, with big box, do you mean like warehouse stores, or do you mean
Your Walmarts, Costco,
Okay.
Publix.
Yeah. Certainly, yes, there's quite a few that are doing it right. I would use, without necessarily using any of those names, but the two that you just mentioned are right in my back door and shopped by me quite often. And there's many times a frustration with trying to, especially big box like warehouse stores like Costco. There's a frustration as to how to find the products that you're looking for and that you go there for on a regular basis. At the same time, you're so delightfully surprised when you see the retailer has, as an example, I've been buying a brand of chips that are made from cassava flour, which is I'm grain free, sugar free, and lo and behold, it became a big brand to the point that Frito Lay just purchased them not too long ago. But one day I walked into Costco and I even wrote a series about it. There was a big, huge display of Siete chips, and every time I'm in there, I buy a bag of chips because that's what I eat, and that's the delight. And usually when you're delighted like that, it's because that store has finally captured the attention of that consumer. It's not necessarily mainstream. And the ones that are doing it well and good are big box retailers.
Excellent. And I think uh, the conversation that we're having today certainly to your point just now extends beyond beverages. That is your specialty, but I think this rings true for all products that wind up in some type of a retail location. And the reason that I wanted to have you on the show today is because we do speak to a lot of consumers out there. And for them to get a better understanding whether they're buying a bottle of wine or a bag of chips, it's great information. I'm so glad you could be here with me. Mm. When it comes to a brand, if I come up with a brand of soda, let's say for how does my brand actually end up at eye level in a major retailer? Is it about what's in the bottle? Is it about what's on the label? Tell me a little bit about that process and for the consumers out there.
Well, all of the above. And when I meet consumers at a cocktail party, as an example, or just having conversations with them, networking, it's so common to hear the consumer say, I had no idea there was this much behind what goes into the shelf. You referenced eye level, and for a new brand who's just entering the marketplace, impossible to get eye level. Why? Because c- category management, and that's how I started out really my career, is category management. Before even working for 7-Eleven, I was selling brands and trying to get our brands, big brands like Tropicana at the time was the world's largest juice company. And shelf space and eye level positioning is based on several things, but volume, brand recognition, history with regard to data and what it has done in that particular store aligned with what it has done from a market share perspective, and then what are its future trends. So all three of those metrics really are taken into account when as a retailer, redoing what we call the schematics, which is how every store is laid out on the shelf. And and so it's very frustrating as a new brand owner. re- How would I get that position, and how is the consumer going to find me if I don't get eye level right away? That's where you have to rely on the will itself. First of all, understanding your product, and then working with the retailer and understanding their objectives as an overall trend. And regardless, like you said, whether it's beverages or food or wine, it's all about what is their strategies. And every major retailer has a different strategy as to how they sell and speak to the consumer. Many are similar, but they still have their own strategies within the store. And so there's so many factors in the beginning that you need to take into account, and be the retailer partner and understand your product and how it can be successful in their stores, and replace, certainly they're also going to be you're also going to be replacing, because shelf space doesn't grow. You're going to be replacing something that is not moving as well. And how do you really build your story? That's understanding your own metrics and how they align with the retailer strategy, and how important it is to the incremental growth of the category. So those will help you gain shelf positioning. And I just want to add at this point too, is that the consumer takes about 5 to 7 seconds to make a decision at the shelf. And so we really have to be focused on our packaging as well, and how we're communicating. Do we stand out? And and our promotional strategies, because if I can tag my product at the shelf in the early days, especially, then I'm at least able to call it out, because all we have in the beginning is at the shelf. And if I'm at the bottom, even more so.
Absolutely. And I love the fact you pointed out, you didn't use this word, but you pointed out the relationship between the brand and the retailer as well. I think it's important to have, as someone who has represented the beverage brands in the past myself, I understand the relationship with the seller. It's not you or your distributor is dropping off a bunch of cases of whatever to the retailer and then it's one and done. There has to be conversation, there has to be back and forth. And the more you can put that story out there, in my experience, the better off you're going to be as the producer in selling your product. So that's that's really good stuff. let's let's dive. There's a lot of data. You deal with a lot of data. I and what you do.
Like we say, king. But data is definitely king.
Absolutely, because yeah, it's the reason Facebook exists. It's the reason that all of these social platforms, you want to know how we as human beings can. But all of that aside, I found it interesting when you and I first talked about the regionality of some products too. Why I might find a specific bottle of Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon in a store here in San Diego, but I might not find that same bottle in a store in Dallas, Texas. And tell us how those decisions are made from a regional standpoint. We talked about that regionality before what you're going to find in San Diego is not necessarily what you're going to find in Des Moines, Iowa. Tell us a little bit about how retail shops make those decisions.
Well, a lot of it is made based on their overall demographic data that they have on each of their stores. But if I'm a retailer and I love I loved going to work for 7-Eleven. Believe it or not, we trained our store, our corporate stores, and our franchisees the same way. And they were definitely empowered to make their own geographic decisions. The retailer, first of all, have your top you have your top items. If you take just a category and take wine for an example, you're going to look at you're going to match the metrics of sales volume by store, by demographics. So you're going to overlay those three so that you can really determine geographically and store by store, because some stores are also in upscale areas, some stores in middle class, some stores in low income. And you're also making those decisions as a retailer on what items that you stock, but you have to overlay your metrics. And we made a lot of decisions, as do most retailers, on what products we made available. And we certainly have the top tier that all stores must carry, which is not unlike any other retailer. But then the individual store owner or manager was responsible for understanding the geographic influences and demographic influences of their own stores. So if they knew that they had a high school right across the street, as an example, that they needed more products that were would attract the high school
Friendly.
persons. A store in the 7-Eleven instance, where you have a lot of lawn care people and contractors and so forth that go in, and depending on the neighborhood, you're influenced by that too. Even if it's an upscale neighborhood, you've still got that. And what we trained in a way that was probably physically and mentally unable to really be accomplished effectively, like I just spoke. But a Publix, as an example, who has 1,400 stores, will have anywhere from 10 to 20 different store different schematic layouts with the core, and then have their different layouts based on the income levels of the surrounding customer base, as well as geographically where they're located. And then you can have the store by store schematic, and that's all done by all kinds of crazy computer software that's been
Right.
around for years and continues to expand and expand. So they're trying their best to make the decisions based on data inputs. And in the case of 7-Eleven, we encouraged mental and physical inputs that could help you really have a better and closer product assortment. But most of it's really driven by the ability to output schematics by store. And then all the stores are based on class A, class B, class C, or however they classify it. But it's done it's able to be done automatically.
Okay. Excellent. And we talked a minute ago about relationships between brands and retail stores. I would also say that there's a relationship between retail stores and their customers, and there should absolutely be one. And I know that I've gone up to retailers in the past, the owner of my local liquor store, for example, I would go up and say, "Hey, have you thought of I really enjoy B product or A product. Have you ever thought about carrying it?" And you I don't know about it, so let me find out more and things. So I think as a consumer, we should also feel empowered to go visit, whether it's a mom and pop liquor store or your local Publix or Kroger, Albertsons here on the West Coast, things like that. And talk to the manager and say, "I discovered this awesome product. You should think about carrying it." How do you feel about that? And I would imagine that retailers would be very open to that input.
Yes, they are open to that input. It's the bigger the retailer, the more difficulty it is to make change often, but and retailers will tell their customer base they're absolutely certainly the mom and pop has a lot more flexibility
You
to make that happen for you, but we've been saying this for years, especially when you're launching a new product and you're trying to get out there on social media. And a lot of times when you're doing a new product and you're working it on social media and you've had people try your product, but yet they can't find it, brand owner, you want to encourage them to ask their local retailer about it. And in the case of a chain account, like Albertsons you mentioned, call their main customer service line too. Absolutely. It's
yeah.
one yeah.
Yeah, I love that advice. And I would encourage anyone who feels strongly about a product to make that call 100%. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about store brands or private labels, what you will. You can sure speak about the differences, what wine in the bottle under a store label or whatnot. But if, and this is probably a very loaded question, but is the era of brand loyalty over, or with, with brands like Kirkland winning gold medals in the wine category, for example, is brand loyalty over, or is the quality of private labels just getting that much better? I know it's a very broad question. How do you feel about that?
I love private label's been around for years and I'm I go back and forth with do I buy private label or because I'm a brand person. I've been a brand person all my life.
Right.
I want to support brands, but unfortunately, the price tag sometimes influences me. But as we talked before, we did this with regard to 7-Eleven. We go back to the original Trader Joe's 2 buck chuck. Used to buy it all the time. We have just in the last 6 months really started enjoying the Kirkland Malbec and the Cabernet, in particular, the Cabernet Sauvignon, one of them is Coppola. And we learned that through
Mm,
somebody wrote an article about it. One of our good friends happens to be her favorite wine. And she's the one who actually pointed that out to us. And I did a little bit more extensive research before this meeting about wines in particular and private labels. And it's also about that trust in the retailer, and the Kirkland brand has become such a trusting brand that doesn't matter that it has an terrible logo. Gosh, it's and now I'm having parties and serving wine with Kirkland logo on it, but still everybody knows now.
Right.
Everybody, you, you still enjoy the label in private label is really coming up upon. I don't want to say you started out the question with is store brand is branded are branded products going away? When you look at any number of categories, you can when you look at market share numbers, you can see the percentage of private label, and depending on the category, it is continuing to grow and grow. Water is a great example, bottled water, but but you still you, brands still have the greatest market share, with the exception of a couple of categories. And I think my husband said to me the other day, he said, I want to fill the wine cooler this time, my treat. I want to fill the wine cooler. So good. And he, I bought our Malbec and our Cabernet, but then he says, pick out a, some nice bottles in the $15 to $20 range, and let's have those as well. He's still, and I came back from Costco. And this is a great story. And I'm like, I went in because he likes international more than domestic anyway. And I went in, and there was somebody in there to help me, and she recommended, but I only had 3 bottles that I could really choose from that I knew that he would be happy. So I told him, I said, take the rest of the money I didn't spend and go to Total Wine and More, which he loves that store. And of course, the selection is unbelievable. And
Right.
they don't really, they're not really store brand
Right.
retailer. And no, I don't think it's dead at all, but that's a great example of trusting your retailer, knowing that and especially something like wine, a huge category to say, ooh, do I really want to do? And Kirkland's doing it with their label on it, whereas Trader Joe's is Charles Shaw, and at 7-Eleven, when we did it, we put our own brand name on it, but there was no indication it was 7 Select.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're sourcing it from wineries, and the quality is very similar to what you're getting because it's the same wine.
And that's why I wanted to bring this up is all and Kirkland is a great example of this on the private labeling. Was a great example of producers finding a way to sell more of their product, albeit at a discounted price, but they're able to sell more of their product. And it especially works for folks, for producers, whether it's beer or wine or soda or potato chips, when they're producing in such volume that they have to get rid of this product because at the end of the day, they are all perishable products. It's longer aged than others, but they're trying to get rid of this. And the private labeling for a quality product is a great way to go about it. So for the listeners out there, if you didn't know that the Malbec for Kirkland at Costco is made by a huge winery here in California. And the same thing goes for their bourbon, same thing goes for their vodka, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to get great quality I'm not advertising. Costco is not a sponsor, but it's just a great example of a retail space that is using volume and their huge amount of traffic, foot traffic in their stores to sell great products at a cheaper price. Putting that out there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great example. I will say that warehouse clubs operate. I was telling a client of mine the other day, we do one thing we want to differentiate between traditional supermarkets and warehouse clubs is that they operate on much thinner margins, and they'll beat you up for the best price, but they're still operating on much thinner margins than traditional supermarkets.
Yeah, that's a great point. And they're relying heavily on membership and things like that as well for their income. So that's a really good point. Time of this recording, we are in dry January, so that should be as folks are listening to this a month ago. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the sober curious out there. We talk a lot about wine on this program, but there's been an explosion of non-alcoholic wine and other mm, liquors and things like that. In your estimation, passing fad, is it a shift fundamentally on how people are drinking, or is it just an exploration right now? What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's an ex. I think the best answer for that is exploration. Now, I did pull some facts, and what a low or no alcohol is increasing annually through 2028 by 4%, no alcohol at 7%. And yeah, those are, and certainly that increasing by that, but that's not a really big number. And
You
a lot of times we talked about this in bottled water for years. Bottled water category just grew and grew. And then when the consumer got all upset about putting water in PET and all that's the bottled water category has never seen a decline except 2008, if I recall, when the economy was so bad. And so the economy was really driving it more than anything. And,
right.
and I had another client of mine, friend of mine, say, Debbie, we need to get in the non-alcohol business because it's just growing by leaps and bounds. And this was February, and he's thinking about January. He's also on the wagon himself. And
Right.
I'm like, ah, Eric, it is the consumers continuing to talk about it. There's new brands coming out left and right, but growing by 4 or 7% on this amount of volume is not, I wouldn't say it's a fad at all. I think it's definitely exploration. And those that are, whether it's dry January or deciding to, or making the choice that you don't drink, it's nice to have something that is enjoyable, that seems like a cocktail, especially if you're bothered by drinking with other people or any number of reasons why you choose that. And and when I've done dry Januaries or dry periods in the past, I'm in, I enjoy something fizzy. Yeah, or holding something in my hand that that looks like alcohol, but I I think it's I think it's got some legs, but it's still always going to be a small segment of the industry.
No, that's great insight. The nice thing to know for our consumers who are listening is that those things are available out there and readily available in pretty much every retail shop, whether it's a supermarket or a mom and pop liquor store, 7-Eleven type convenience spot. You're going to find great option in the non-alcoholic field. So if you're making that decision, it's going to be a lot easier to do moving forward. Let's let's switch gears again a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about my background and how I look at it, and I would love to have your opinions and feedback on things. When I look at, oh, again, let's talk about my specialty. I look at a bottle of wine and I think about everything that it took to go into that bottle to produce what's in that bottle. You in looking through your stuff, you use the term called velocity, and you look at that, or you may look at that same bottle and think about velocity. You
Mhm.
know, when it comes to turning that product around, where do those worlds meet for in the eyes of the consumer? Quality versus get it out the door as quick as we can. Where do those meet?
Every category has, and I don't think we realize this as consumers, but every category has a premium segment, a mid tier, and a value segment.
Mhm.
And that goes across the board. And we'll see that in wine, just like anything else. And so part of it is you as a brand owner, and cons- I talk to clients about this a lot when they're building their new brands. You are establishing where you want to be. So
Mhm.
if velocity and volume, i- if velocity is your goal,
Mhm.
then you're going to set your price points accordingly, and you're going to have to sacrifice ingredients, because today it's much more likely that you're interested in putting on the shelf a premium product with any number of ingredients and or quality and so forth, and yet
Mhm.
you want to make sure that you get the velocity out of the gate and longer term velocity. So I think it's more difficult because we have to take a stand on where we want to be, and then understand our expectations from that particular position, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. And yeah, I would add as well that for a good portion, I don't know the number, a good portion of consumers out there, the actual price tag does make a difference
Mm.
in their choices. The answer is probably that. How are you pricing your product as the producer with the meeting the final retail price that is acceptable to a consumer? I guess it's the answer to that. And it makes 100% sense. If I don't want to be dismissive of that tact when you go out shopping, but and rather very much at top of mind every time I go to the store. And I'm sure for everyone listening to the show, what can I afford to pay for that, whatever it might be, whether it's a T-bone steak or a hamburger patty or a bottle of cab from Napa or a bottle of cab from Chile. Which one are we going to spend our money on? And it does come down to cost at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a series on part of Will It Sell, but more about how do we put together a focus group or a survey that can effectively understand if the consumer, not only will they buy, not only will they pay the price point for the product that you're launching, but more about, is it enough for them to trade from the product that they were already buying?
Mhm. That goes back to the question about brand loyalty. And this is a great segue into my next question. If a small brand or someone who's just now emerging into the market, and it doesn't matter what the product is, a small brand gets a meeting with a buyer like you used to be,
Mhm.
what's the one thing they must have ready besides a great product?
I'm going I'm going to say as data,
Mhm.
data. So history. And it's the one thing that most new brands miss or don't even understand. Getting out there and getting your regional test market and really watching your data. And it's not about what you ship in the back door. It's what about goes through the register. And you've got, if you've got, even if it's a little, even if it's a little piece of data, if you can show how your product has performed and against the competition, and you may not be able to gather that information as much as you, if you've got the sales through the register in several examples, then it's one of the most important things to have besides the product and the package and the consumer and all that good stuff that we all know. But that's, and it's one of the biggest things that they forget about. They don't. They don't even understand that they have to have that. And they don't even understand, oh, I need to go get that. I've been selling 10 cases per week per store. You, it would drive me nuts when I was a buyer when a new brand would come in and say, it's selling really well.
Mhm.
And what does that mean to me?
Compared to uh, absolutely. Yeah, it's their statistics, yeah, are an interesting animal, and data is an interesting animal, and percent. My father-in-law has a saying that you can't take percentages to the bank.
Yeah.
It's, when you're, yo, it grew by 7%. What does that mean? 7% compared to what? Mhm. Anyway, yeah, and it's super fascinating. I've got a billion and one questions for you, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So we're going to jump right into the lightning round. Don't mind. So the lightning rounds where I just ask some quick fire fun questions and just give me the first thing that pops in your mind. How does that sound?
Sure.
All right. When it comes to wine, Debbie, screw cap or cork?
Court.
All right. The best inexpensive beverage indulgence that you secretly love?
Inexpensive is espresso martini. Don't
Espresso martini. Yeah. Love it. Love it. They might have the same answer to this next one, but what's the most overhyped drink trend that you've seen in the last 30 years? You the same answer.
Yeah, it could be the same answer. Over yeah, any cocktail that cosmopolitans, anything that takes the traditional, because I'm a traditional martini drinker, by the way. I just
Mhm.
espresso when either we make it ourselves or I know that it's made at its core, but the hype is in general. Let's go into mixology. And I know you were looking for a one-word answer, but
No, not at all.
you can go into a cocktail bar and you've got 10 drinks and you read the descriptions and you're like, wow, that looks interesting. That looks interesting. That, wow, elderberry. Wow, basil. And then I'll have a vodka martini with a lemon twist, please.
Yeah, it's I see that all the time. My wife and I eat out quite a bit. Just seeing some cocktail menus nowadays, it's funny to and you're absolutely right. Oh, there's basil in that one. There's rosemary in that one. There's cinnamon bark in that one. I'll have a beer, please. Uh, But that's just me. So, Debbie, if you were a beverage brand, what would your label look like?
Whimsical.
Whimsical. Fantastic. So, are we talking like abstract arts or maybe a cartoon? What are you thinking?
More abstract art. Yeah.
I really appreciate you answering all of my questions and having fun with me there in the lightning round. You've got a free download that you are going to be offering to our listeners today. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's all about the question, will it sell? So it takes
Mhm.
you through a series of ideas on how to ensure that you've done all your research and analysis and understand whether or not you've truly got a consumer need and whether or not your product is differentiated. And my website is debbiewildrick.com, DEBBIEWILDRICK. And if you just put free.debbiewildrick.com, then you get a link where you can go straight to that download.
That's fantastic. And I'll make sure that those links are in the show notes. So it's just an easy click for you. So if you've got a product that you want to see on the shelves sometime soon, this would be an awesome tool for you to run your numbers, run your data
It's
through,
great.
through Debbie's download. I'm sure she would appreciate it. And check out her website while you're there. Debbie has such a fascinating background in retail, and she is, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Queen of Beverages. Is there anything else that you want to chat before we head out, Debbie?
Just good luck to every entrepreneur. It's a fun, fun space to be in. And it's also very tough. So I say good luck and I wish you the best.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Debbie Wildrick, everybody. 30 years of knowing exactly how that wall of drinks gets built, and she just handed you the blueprint. If you're an entrepreneur with a product that you're trying to get to market, Debbie has a free download called Will It Sell? It walks through the research and analysis you need to do before you ever step in front of a buyer. It's at free.www.wildrick.com, and that link is sitting in the show notes or just below. And if this episode made you look at a grocery store aisle differently, which I hope it did, do me a favor, hit subscribe so you never miss a conversation like this one. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and if you've got 2 minutes, please subscribe wherever you possibly can. I would really, really appreciate it. Every single one, every of your messages also gets read and genuinely helps more people find the show. So please drop us a comment as well. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. All the links you will find in the show notes. So go ahead and click. And until next time, keep wondering and wandering, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Pour and Explore. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Love to hear your stories or questions. Drop me a message at cheers@thewineguy.vin. That's cheers@thewineguy.vin. Or let's connect on TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook. Grab those links at thewineguy.vin. Until next time, let's keep wondering and wandering. Cheers, everybody.